Me just in time to tell me what I needed to hear. So if you Good day, everybody. Welcome to our workshop on building political power. This is being sponsored by the UCLA Labor Center and the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance. This is the fourth of a series of online workshops on racial justice. And we have four extraordinary leaders and guest speakers today who will be introducing in just a minute. So we'll be starting in just a couple minutes. We're going to allow people to join, and then we'll get started.
While we wait for a few folks to join us today, why doesn't everybody drop their name, their affiliation, and tell us something that made you...
You cut off at the end, Justine. People are going to add their name, their affiliation, and what else?
Something that made them smile today.
All right, something that made you smile today. So drop that in the chat so that we know who's with us today. So please share in the chat. This is the check-in question. Please drop it in the chat, your name, affiliation, and what made you smile today. I turn my head to meet your sun-kissed face in this quiet place. I can give you all my time. Okay, why don't we get started? Once again, my name is Kent Wong. I'm the director of the UCLA Labor Center, and I was the founding president of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance. We are having a workshop today on building political power. And we have four guests, all very good friends of mine, who will be joining us for our panel. They are Gloria Caoile, who is a former national executive director and one of the founders of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance, and for many years was a leader in the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Also with us is Susan Minato, who is a co-president of Unite Here, Local 11, the Hotel Workers Union of Los Angeles, Orange County, and Arizona. So they are a powerful union that is making a change in critical parts of the country. And we have Lindsay Peifer, who is with the National Education Association. She is an educator from the state of Minnesota, but she is now in Washington, D.C., working out of the NEA headquarters to advance alliances between labor and the API community. And finally, we have the current national president of APALA, Brady, Calma, who is also an organizer with SEIU United Healthcare West, UHW. So we're thrilled to have the four of you with us today. And we're going to have a quick slide just introducing them. And then I'm going to lead off with a short PowerPoint on how do unions build power. So welcome to our workshop on building political power.
Hi, everyone. So thank you for the introduction. Now, this is the agenda, just a brief agenda. So we started off with a welcome, the check-in question, if anyone wants to still answer it. And then we will introduce the speakers, and we will have a 15-minute PowerPoint on political power led by Kent. And then we will have the panel speak until 5 o'clock. And then we will dedicate 15 minutes for the Q&A. And we will just have a closing with evaluations and a few announcements. And I pass it off to Hazel.
Hello, everyone. I'll be introducing our first speaker, Gloria, who is a civic leader in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. She was a founding member of the Asian Pacific American Women Leadership Institute, the only national organization dedicated to nurturing and developing leadership skills among Asian American and Pacific Islander women. She was also a founding member of APALA and has served on the boards of several civil rights groups, including the Filipino American Civil Rights Advocates and the National Federation of Filipino American Associations. On to our second speaker, Susan Minato, who is the co-president of Unite Here Local 11, which represents more than 30,000 workers in the hospitality industry in Southern California and Arizona. Susan Minato also holds multiple roles as an executive vice president for Unite Here, chair of trustees of the Hospitality Training Academy in Los Angeles, and on the executive boards of the Arizona AFL-CIO, the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, and the UCLA Labor Center. I'm passing it on to Anna.
Yes, and our third guest speaker will be Lindsay, and she is a senior program policy analyst specialist focusing on the AAPI outreach and engagement. She was also an educator for 24 years and an active member of Education Minnesota, American Federation of Teachers, AFT, and NEA. And our last speaker is Brady Calma. He is the senior staff leader at SEIU UHW and the president of APALA. Brady has led organizing and political campaigns, negotiated contracts, led strikes, and built leadership programs for local unions. Currently, he's focusing on building API leadership and activism.
So much for the introduction, and for Lisa, Anna, and Hazel for putting those slides together and for introducing our panelists. I now want to move forward with this PowerPoint presentation on building political power and how do unions build power. Part of the reason that we have these videos and these PowerPoints available through this online workshop series is so that these are resources that you can actually take back to your unions, to your communities, to your APALA chapters, and to encourage more education among union leaders and activists. So this is a presentation that I prepared for today on how unions build political power. So let's start by, where do unions stand in the year 2022? The 2020 election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris was a significant union victory, although the country is deeply divided politically, economically, and racially. I know that many of us have been following with fascination the hearings regarding the attempted coup on January 6, 2021, and the attempt of the former president to actually overturn the democratic results of the 2020 election. We also are in the midst of the third year of the pandemic that has taken a huge toll on union members and their families and has increased class and racial divisions and inequality. At the same time, we see that there is a positive sentiment towards unions that is now at a 50-year high, which presents a huge opportunity for the labor movement. Union organizing is on the rise. We see it with Amazon workers, with more than 200 Starbucks stores across the country unionizing. Fast food workers, even gig workers, including Uber and Lyft drivers, are now unionizing. And what we also see is that young people and workers of color in particular are at the forefront of a new wave of union organizing. So So I wanted to go back because there's been a lot of focus on the 2020 election and the lie, the big lie that is being promoted by many members of Congress to this day that has been championed by the former president. And that is that the 2020 election was stolen. But I want to go back to talk about the 2016 election, where Trump actually won the election. And although he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes against Hillary Clinton, because of the undemocratic electoral college, he was able to prevail on the electoral count, 306 to 232. And the three decisive states that made his election possible were three union strongholds historically of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania that went for Obama in 2012, but flipped to Trump in 2016. It was 70,000 votes in those three states that were the margin of victory for Donald Trump to secure the election in 2016. What we see is in the 2020 election that because of union mobilization in those three states, in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, they flipped back from red to blue. But we also see that there were two other states, Arizona and Georgia, that were decisive in securing a commanding majority of the electoral votes for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and millions in the real votes that led to this victory. So labor's role was critical in regaining these three Midwest states that Trump won in 2016, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Unite Here and other unions played a huge role in flipping Arizona from red to blue, and we'll be hearing from Susan Minato, who is on the front lines of that battle. Stacey Abrams, Unite Here, and other unions built a grassroots mobilization in Georgia that flipped the US Senate. So even though we have a razor-thin majority in the Senate of Democrats, it was due to the extraordinary efforts of Stacey Abrams and a labor community alliance that turned out the vote in Georgia. As I said, labor and communities of color were decisive in the Biden victory. White union households voted for Biden at a much higher rate than white non-union households. What do we see in terms of union trends today? Unions have been in decline since the 1960s. Unions shrunk as a percentage of the workforce from 35% in the 1950s to 11% today. That means that back in the 50s, fully 1 in 3 worker was in a union, and today only 1 in 10 worker is in a union. This is due to, in part, the government policies of deindustrialization, deregulation, and de-unionization, hostile anti-union laws that have been enacted by corporate America. Today, public sector unionism is at 33.6%, while private sector unionism is down to 6.2%. So that's a very staggering decline in private sector unionization, where for the first time in history, there are now more public sector unionized workers than private sector unionized workers in the US. So it's no accident we have such large unions like AFSCME, like the Service Employees International Union, the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers. This is all a reflection of the changes in the labor movement and the relative strength in public sector unionism and the decline in private sector unionism. This is a chart that charts union membership in the US during these 1930s, during the height of the Great Depression and the enactment of labor laws that made the possibility of growing and building unions such a phenomenon that emerged in the 1930s, a huge wave of organizing that continued into the 60s, and then a sharp decline since then. Declining union power undermines worker power, and it doesn't just hurt unionized workers, it hurts workers across the board. Declining union density means a shrinking middle class, less political power, weakening protections for workers, and a growing number of low-wage non-union jobs. The proliferation of low-wage non-union jobs in the private sector means that healthcare benefits, vacation pay, sick pay, retirement benefits are now the exception rather than the rule. And lower union density will continue to undermine union standards and undermine worker rights, especially in the public sector. If we continue on the present trajectory, the future of unions and the future of the US workers is in jeopardy. The status quo is not working. And I wanted to say that APALA has been actively advancing this whole notion of social justice unionism, which we think is decisive to transform the labor movement and to grow worker power. And I want to contrast what social justice unionism is as opposed to the traditional business union model that unfortunately many unions to this day uphold. The business union model is one of servicing the members, whereas the social justice union model calls for the organizing of workers and having them step up to the forefront to fight for economic and social justice. Business unionism promotes exclusive organization and leadership that has a disproportionate number of white male aging leaders at the top, whereas social justice unionism embraces inclusive organization and leadership. Business unionism relies on politicians and the Democratic Party. Social justice unionism builds worker political power. Business unionism promotes US nationalism, whereas social justice unionism promotes internationalism. And so in the work that we have done for many years to try to transform the labor movement to embrace social justice unionism, we employ a method known as a power analysis. Who are our allies? Who are our opponents? Who are the decision makers? How much power do they have? And how do we increase the power of our allies and decrease the power of our opponents? And so this power analysis is critical in any campaign, in any evaluation of a union, community-based organization, or movement. And so the questions that we are posing today to our panel is how do we build a labor and Asian American and Pacific Islander alliance for power? And I wanted to feature this image, which has Larry Itliong, one of the leaders of the Delano grape strike, and Cesar Chavez on the right, and Ruther, the president of the United Auto Workers. But this is a reflection of social justice unionism that brings multiracial unity and organizing an agenda and builds power for workers. We are at a critical year. 2022 will determine the future of the House. It will determine the future of the Senate and whether we will be able to maintain a Democratic majority in both houses of Congress or not. And increasingly, we see that the API workforce and the API electorate is playing a critical role in battleground districts and in battleground states across the country. And so this is our challenge. This is our opportunity as APALA and as leaders within the API community to turn out our communities like never before to engage in the political process. And with that, I want to now turn to our four panelists. And I wanted to lead off with Gloria Caoile, our former executive director. And Gloria has been a path breaker within the Asian American community in developing political mobilization targeting the AAPI community. Our current APALA executive director, Alvina Ye, was recruited by you to do political mobilization work. She moved to DC based on your recruitment, and now she is our executive director. So could you talk about why it is important for the labor movement to invest such significant resources and staff power on political mobilization?
Thank you, Kent, and thank you everyone for being with us today. But I really want to address Alvina. Alvina, I hope you have no regrets, okay? Because we're in a good place. We're in the best times of our life, and we really need to move forward. So Alvina, keep sending me Christmas cards, okay? You know, we have a saying, and everybody knows this. It's, you know, you put your money where your mouth is. And so for us to be heard, labor really had to, be part of the spending resources for political mobilization. And the intent of labor was really to influence public policy that really affects and favors folks in the labor movement. You know, we mobilize politically to encourage masses of people to express themselves and undertake political action. it really relates to what we do as communities. We do it to be heard. And most of us are part of the, labor force, and our engagement can be local, state, or federal. Elected officials at all levels really make budget decisions that affect us. They make our working hours, they impact what they would be, retirement and health benefits, occupational safety, and, many more issues that affect employees. But labor just wants to make sure that those elected officials really address the issues that affect us. After all, we are what makes this country work, and I cannot help but reflect on this past pandemic when most of the healthcare providers were Asian Pacific Americans. As a matter of fact, I'm proud to say there was mostly Filipino Americans that were affected by this. And, when you recognize the fact that some folks take it for granted and don't address issues that affect them as workers, it's not right. It's just not right. So we need our voices. And that's what really labor wanted to do. Labor wanted to tell everyone, hey, we're here and we can, and maybe these are not the right words to say at this point in time. We can either make or break you. But, sometimes we just stifle ourselves from saying what we really mean because we feel we're not powerful. But, our numbers speak so much for who we are. And the labor movement really now has the resources and the staff power to elect folks that will support our issues, support labor issues. And we are really very much, part of this. We are, as Asian Pacific Americans and as APALA members, I just want to reflect on the time when we asked the labor movement, when we asked the AFL-CIO to address us and to create the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance. So we're here to stay. Labor spends the money because we have to put our money where our mouth is.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And believe it or not, Gloria, as we are speaking, is running a national conference celebrating the 25th anniversary of the National Alliance of Filipino American Association. So believe it or not, even as we are speaking, she's still running a national conference. So Gloria continues to inspire us all. Our next panelist is Susan Minato. Susan is one of the few API women union presidents in the country. And she has done extraordinary work for so many years in building the political power of her union, which has been at the forefront of the transformation of the Los Angeles and the California labor movement. And so we are in debt to Susan's leadership, but we want her to especially talk about the extraordinary work that she helped to lead in flipping Arizona from red to blue in 2020 and in helping to secure the Democratic victory of the 2 Senate races in Georgia. So Susan, tell us about that work.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. And thanks for those words, Gloria. You're always such an you give us a lot of inspiration. So these were kind of really important victories for a number of reasons, but we have been doing political work since the transformation of Local 11 back in the late 80s, early 90s. We started doing political work on the ground back in the 90s. And part of the reason was because we didn't have the money to just hand over and donate to electeds. And we said, well, what's our power? Our power is our workers. And so we began to teach workers, no matter what their language, what did they have a car, what they had done in their past. It didn't matter. We were training them to go in the field. So everything is sort of built on worker participation first off. And then, so we had lots of experience in the Los Angeles and the Southern California area and lots of success. In 2006, we went to Arizona to help that fledgling local at the time, and then use the same lessons from Los Angeles and Southern California in Arizona to sort of build the movement. And same thing, get workers involved. And so so we had started participating in electoral work in Arizona in the 07 and then 2007. And then but we had reached the kind of height of our political work in Arizona around 18 or, so. And so of course, you all remember we had a pandemic. We're still in a pandemic. And so in 2017, when I was elected co-president and my co-presidents, my two other co-presidents, we knew, we had planned in 2017 that in 2020, we were going to put a lot of work into flipping Arizona for the Democrats. So in 17, we sort of knew that in advance. And then of course, the pandemic hits. And the whole operation was supposed to be built on going door to door. And, during that time, there wasn't even a vaccine. It was kind of nutty, right? And so, but we determined in about in May, that we could not win Arizona for the Democrats if we did not go on the ground. And so we set out to really work hard to figure out the COVID protocol. And we ended up putting 550 workers who were not working, remember, because of the pandemic, 550 people on the ground. I personally led that. It was the biggest operation that Local 11 had ever done. And we hit about 900,000 doors. And, honestly, it was like tremendous. We were the only operation on the ground to begin with. A few came out towards the end. And so we're very, very proud of that. We took that same group plus and moved to Georgia because we realized, okay, maybe we win the presidency, but if you don't have the Senate, you're obviously got one arm tied behind your back. And so we worked with Stacey Abrams and her amazing organization, and we took, Unite Here, Arizona plus other parts of Unite Here took areas around Atlanta, which was surprisingly Asian in certain counties. And same thing, went on the ground. And so, I think Warnock numbers and also Ossoff and Warnock both. So, but the really nice thing that I think came out of that, besides the actual result, was that, and Kent was very supportive of this, is that we decided that we would turn our federal super PAC called Worker Power into a more specific organization that would stay and work on the federal level on electoral work. So I think later there's a question about what we're going to be doing in the future. So I'll leave it there.
Susan, that is such an inspiring story of how one union took on the state of Arizona and made a huge difference in flipping that from a deep red state and to secure a victory in 2020, and how hundreds and hundreds of rank and file union members then moved to Georgia to turn out the vote there and were decisive in securing victory of the Senate. So this is what union power looks like, up front and personal. And if we had more unions like Local 11, the country would be in a very, very different place. So congratulations, Susan. And I just wish more people knew the work that you and Local 11 were able to accomplish in 2020 and embrace that model and embrace that lesson. Lindsay, we are so happy about your role now in a national leadership position in the largest union in the country. National Education Association has 3 million members, and you have educators and teachers and education workers all across the country on the front lines during the pandemic in providing such a critical role to our students and to our communities. But I wanted to hear what is NEA's role with regard to political mobilization and in activating your members to get involved in political work.
There are a few ways that we are engaging members in political mobilization. And I from your PowerPoint, I think that social justice unionism is something that we're really proud that that's how we approach our union work with our members. So we have professional support, advocacy training, and building relationships with community partners. So for our professional supports, we have programs such as See Educators Run, which brings together NEA experts and top political consultants to help our members develop the confidence and skills they need to run a successful campaign. We also have conferences to empower our members to organize, such as the Conference on Racial and Social Justice. We have a minority leadership training program, Leadership Summit, and these events, we provide resources and toolkits for our members so they understand how to organize. We also have online resources such as Ed Justice, and you can sign up for it at neaedjustice.org. And this connects and engages our members to advocate for racial and social justice in our schools and our communities. And it also provides take action guides and resources on issues that are really important, such as supporting ethnic studies, knowing your rights to combat censorship in education. We obviously have a lot of that happening right now. So there are also like you can download information specifically to your state to help support you to on your specific issues locally to organize. We also do some advocacy. So digital advocacy is an effective tool to mobilize our members both in a federal advocacy and during campaign season. It's a great resource to advance our priorities at Capitol Hill and ensure our members' voices are heard by legislators and members of the electorate. We have legislative briefings with our board of directors, and those are elected educators from across the country who then lobby on the Hill, and then they share those resources with their members in their state and local affiliates. And then lastly, a huge part of what we do in my department is to work to build authentic relationships with community partners and family organizations. And I can go into that a little bit more later.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. And NEA has also been significant in terms of there is a woman of color who is the president of the association, but actually NEA has a long and proud tradition of having a very diverse leadership and staff of the organization and investing in labor community partnerships. And so, especially when we're talking about mobilizing for political power, it is those labor community partnerships that are so crucial so that we can turn out our communities to vote. So thank you for that work, Lindsay. Brady, the last two times I've seen you, even though both of us are here in California, we're back in Boston and DC. APALA received a national award at the American Federation of Teachers Civil and Human Rights Lunch as part of the convention. And then we were together for the 30th anniversary celebration at the AFL-CIO headquarters. And so, as the national president of APALA, could you talk about what is APALA's plan for this critical 2022 election year?
Yes, absolutely, Kent. If I were to talk about all of the work that APALA is doing around political power, I think it would take like a 50-page or a 50-slide PowerPoint. But the work that we do is so tremendous. And we do work around our politics at so many different levels. We just heard from these wonderful panelists how labor leans into politics and wins for workers. And the work of APALA is to really work and partner with these labor unions and labor leaders to make sure that API members and API voters are seen and are heard. I would take a moment and recognize Tita Gloria, who you've commended, and the work that she's done has definitely paved the way for the API community, not just in Nevada, but all over the country. And I think it's that commitment that APALA has been supporting and those outcomes that APALA has been delivering. You mentioned our executive director, Alvina Ye, where I would say that we've always we've always built political power in the API community, but Alvina took what APALA is doing to a much higher level, to become known amongst civic engagement groups, both state, local, and also national community groups and community organizations, where APALA is a powerhouse. Now, what does that work look like? At the national level, our National Executive Board just met last month to talk about the work that we need to do to support chapters across the country. We actually have, Lindsay, of course, is our board member, chairing our Racial Justice Committee. And then we also have Eunice Howe out of Seattle Unite Here, and Tavita Uahafate out of Transportation Workers Union. They chair our political committee. And the charge of that committee is to figure out what we need to do to support our chapters in turning out volunteers and engaging our community. The challenge that we face is our community is the least talked to by campaigns, by candidates, and by the political parties. And we know in politics that no one's gonna vote unless someone calls them to get them out, regardless of what you look like or where you're from or what language we speak. And so that's the work of APALA, right? To work with community organizations who are the best messengers to our community to get them out to vote. We also know here in California, in Orange County, that if we're not engaging our community, we know that the right-wing candidates and campaigns will. And we're starting to see in California that the only way the GOP can win in a competitive district is by running an API candidate. So what do we have to do to turn that around? Our leaders and our staff at APALA, Vivian Chang, who is our political director, political and civic engagement director, she actually went to Nevada for the first campaign that she ran, and she was mentored by our very own Gloria Caoile. So another shout out. That work is integral nationally and then also locally. And it's all about all of you folks. I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but all of y'all know what political power will bring us. APALA plays a huge role in that. If we do not engage our community, our elders will continue to be attacked in the streets. If we don't call out racist and xenophobic candidates, they will continue to use us to mobilize a radical conservative racist electorate. So we're doing important work. All of you are doing important work, and I know we're going to turn out our members in our community in November.
So much, Brady. And I really echo your sentiments about the path-breaking work that Gloria has done to advance this partnership. So, but Gloria, I want you to break it down a little more, because when you first started doing this work, really Asian Americans were invisible. Even when they put together the AFL-CIO racial breakdowns, there wasn't a column for Asian Americans. It was white, Black, Latino. Yeah. That was it. There's no one else that counts. And so you fought for building some of the very first partnerships between the labor movement and the API community. And it was focused on critical battleground districts and states, because we had to show that the API vote could make a difference. So could you tell me about that process of bringing labor and the API vote together, and how we can continue that trajectory to strengthen this into the future?
Kent, actually listening to Susan and Lindsay and Brady, it's the testimonial of why they should have done this long time ago. And I have to really say, there was a time in our history, when labor was really not friendly to Asian Americans. And over time, we changed that. We changed that because it was relevant to them that there were some pods in this country that needed for us to be engaged. One of the things that we say right now, and Susan just did it in Arizona. With us in Nevada, it was like, we say flippin' Nevada, flippin' Georgia, flippin', it's really true. It's what we need to do. But the concept really was being vocal and being vigilant and using our voice with the labor movement and saying, you can't send folks to our community that don't look like us, don't talk like us, and don't act like us. You just have to recognize that fact that for all of us that are in the labor movement now, we have a voice and we can play an integral part in making labor's voice really more loud in the political arena. And so I think through the years, we've accomplished all of this and all of the above, and it is not just about us being in a specific state. I think they've also recognized the fact that we play a role nationally, wherever we are. I just want to use the example of Georgia. And through Brady's help with this and SEIU, we were in Nevada, we were the phone banks of the folks in Georgia, but that's not for public consumption, but it's for labor consumption. It's because that we are all in this together. And I think, when Lindsay talked about, the things that they do at NEA now, it's our playbook. It's really our playbook. It's about really voter education, voter mobilization, voter participation, and voter protection. And now there's really another mindset to this that we really need to speak out because, as Brady alluded to, there's this massive, hate crime going around, and we have to call it what it is, and we have to be vigilant about the things that we do that affect public policy. And labor, when I'm asked that how did APALA engage the labor movement, and the Asian American community, I just really want to say that it should be the other way. It was really labor then recognizing to engage the Filipino American community, Asian Pacific American community, and APALA, that we became part of the labor movement because we had a strong voice and because we knew how to use it. And we've taught our folks how to use this voice. This is the one thing I think that I keep telling people, we have a voice, use it. Don't be afraid, use it, because nobody else can do the kind of work we do if we don't do it ourselves. And through the years, they've invested in APALA. Labor has invested in the APALA for everything really that Brady has mentioned. We are the stronghold that they need. It's, to be honest, and I don't say that with modesty, in some states, we are the secret weapon that would turn around, the country to be able to have, these politicians that we support address the issues that affect us, that affect all of us in the labor movement. And we've played a great role in making this happen. Our programs, sometimes we say we have nonpartisan programs because we do civic engagement, we do all this voter registration program. Yes, we wear so many hats. Sometimes, it is just too heavy up there, but we carry it well. And we know how to use it at the specific times that it needs to be used. So I am proud of the work we do. I really am. I'm proud of the work that we at APALA that has been able to turn around, many states and to engage ours. But to me, Georgia was a great example of how all of us around the country came together, and we didn't have to shout out anybody. I am, proud of Arizona, here in Nevada, we thought Nevada would never turn blue. I mean, the others turned blue in their face when we turned it blue. But, for now, I think we do the great work that we do because labor has recognized the work that we can do and that the part that we play in the labor movement.
So much, Gloria. And all of the polls reflect that the vast majority of the API vote is leaning Democratic, and especially young API votes, because that was another misconception. A lot of people in labor said, well, we can't turn out the API vote because they vote Republican. That's not true. And increasingly, all of the polls reflect that API votes lean Democratic, and especially API young votes absolutely lean progressive, lean Democratic. The other thing that both Brady and Gloria lifted up is that at a time when anti-Asian hate is on the rise, we need to double down on building political power and on holding elected officials accountable. We cannot allow the racist rhetoric from the previous administration to poison, the narrative of the media and of the conservative politicians across the country. And so that is a critical role of building political power. Susan, getting back to you. Now, I know that what you raised earlier is so important, that there is a multi-year strategy. There is a long-term commitment to flip these states and to build worker political power. And so I want to celebrate that, but also to talk, we're 3 months out to the elections. What is going on now as we speak in terms of trying to plan for a November victory?
Well, Unite, I'll speak from sort of a Unite Here perspective, although, as different people have alluded to, there are other groups that participate with us. And so, but I mean, from the Unite Here point of view, we plan to we're already on the ground in Pennsylvania, primarily in the Philadelphia area under Roslyn Wasinich. You might know her, and she did the 2020 round. We're just getting on the ground in Nevada. Local 226 is doing that. And then we in Arizona are already on the ground as well, starting with voter registration and then flipping that team into the, sort of get out the vote kind of team. And we also just ran a campaign school for political leads, not canvassers, but the lead canvassers. And we're actually finishing up the final week in Arizona right now. But the idea is, of course, to be able to raise money enough on the congressional and or Senate races. So, Arizona, we're doing the U.S. Senate race, Mark Kelly, and then we'll be doing in California, even though California is roundly seen as Democratic, but Orange County, as I think Brady just referred to, there are two that there's a lot that Asian candidates do especially well there and are really going to be the saving grace for Orange County. So Dr. Mahmood is running for the House race that we'll be involved with, and then Jay Chen in the House 45th district in Orange County. So we'll be involved with those and all the down ballot that go under it. So I think that's a really important thing that most people here do know, is that, you can raise money on the big races like the Congress, like the Senate, and then, but your walkers are out there with talking to voters so they can talk about the local races as well. And so there's Board of Supervisors there's a chance to flip Orange County's supervisors very, very soon. There was a big blow up in Anaheim. And so the mayor needed to resign. So there's going to be a lot of down ballot races like that. But the basic idea that we practice in Unite Here in general is that each local union that decides that it wants to be kind of a social justice union, as you referred to, becomes the holder of a certain area. And so in our case, Arizona, we've merged now, so Arizona is our area, but it needs to sort of be super long-term. And so we just plan to, participate in every single race, every single time, pretty much, targeting, of course, smartly. But Kelly, will be super important. There are other couple of congressional races there. And so, but, obviously that's not enough. Every organization needs to have a similar thing that they do, especially in coordination on independent expenditures. So you know, there's a table in Arizona, we work with that table. There's a table in Nevada that we work with that table. In Pennsylvania, there's a table. But I do want to say one quick thing is, for the first time in my life, even though I've been in political elections since the 90s, the first time in my life, I went to the America Votes convention back in, I think it was like a few months back anyway, in DC. And every major political group goes there to basically, you know, connect with other people there, and then say what their plans are in hopes of raising money. And so, but you know, it's the first time that we were there, and you know, as I said, since the 90s we've been doing it, first time we show up, and you know, that's crazy. You know, and so the unions are, you know, we depend on our own money a lot of times, but actually unions don't have enough money to change the entire country. And so we have the seed money to be able to do a lot of stuff. And so that's a really important part of the electoral system, but we need to be part of the mainstream of the system as well. And so those are the major breakthroughs that we made in Arizona over the time, because we were like, you know, major game in town. And that's true for Nevada as well. And so the Senate Majority PAC and America Votes and all these other major fundraising, you know, avenues, you know, are really critical to whether you can really do things on the ground. Like, you know, for example, we had APALA, we had a few APALA members in Arizona with us. And so it was like amazing. And APALA raised the money, and that was, you know, really critical. But, you know, if we're going to talk about big money and be able to run nationally and be able to, you know, dictate what happens, like, for example, Orange County, I really believe that is a super, super important thing, not just for the Democrats, but for Asian Democrats too, right? And so, but to really be part of the conversation, you know, we have to also be part of the, you know, like push ourselves into the mainstream at times, so that we can get, you know, why should America Votes be giving other people money? They shouldn't give other people money. They should give organizers money, right? And so I think that, like, the labor, social justice, unionism, and APALA, you know, and other organizations that are labor organizations, it's critical that we kind of put our heads together to strategize about how to get in the center of that more.
Thank you so much, Susan. And I know that Unite Here is already in the midst of the campaign, and we really are hopeful with that type of mobilization strategy that we can really make a difference come November. You know, Lindsay, one thing that I'm so excited about is that NEA actually has a position like yours that is chiefly responsible for developing relationships between your union and the API community. The reality is that is one of the very few unions in the country that has a position like that specifically cultivates and develops relationships with the API community. And that needs to change. We need more positions like yours, given the fact that there are 22 million Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the country. We are the fastest growing ethnic community in the country, and the labor movement is missing the boat unless they invest more heavily in developing this alliance. But I wanted you to talk about how your role in cultivating and building this alliance also contributes to political mobilization.
Yeah, building authentic relationships with our community partners and family organization is a main focus of what we do in my department, which is we call CAPE, but it stands for Community Advocacy and Partnership Engagement. So if we start with this idea that public education is one of the cornerstones of our democracy, that the idea that no matter our race, our background, our zip code, every student has the right to attend a neighborhood public school that inspires and develops critical thinking and curiosity, challenges and enriches all of our students' imaginations, then we have to do the work to ensure that they have safe, just, and equitable schools. And that relies on creating authentic relationships with community partners. We as a union cannot do this alone. We need community partners that will help us fight for the things like gun violence prevention, immigration rights, voting rights, LGBTQ+ rights, honesty in education, because every student has the right to be seen and valued and feel safe in school. So NEA wants to be a good partner for partner organizations. And so when we are reaching out to different partners, we want to listen and learn from those partners to see what their priorities are, so we can help advocate for those priorities. For the API community, we hear this need for disaggregated data and for teaching API curriculum. And so we want to mobilize around these priorities and elect people that see these things as priorities as well. And so we're focusing a lot of our work on that. All of this is connected to political mobilization, because as we know, elections matter and representation matters, and we need to work together to get people elected that will fight for the safe and just schools that every community, every student deserves. Additionally, partnerships with community organizations help us inform our members. So for example, API Vote presented API voter information at our conference on racial and social justice, which better informs how our members are able to engage API voters in their communities. We also have a partnership within CAPA, which allows NEA to have rich dialogue with a lot of different community partners about shared values and interests, and that helps inform us about how we engage our members.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Lindsay for advancing Asian American Studies curriculum in the K-12 schools, because the right wing is attacking ethnic studies. They're attacking critical race theory, even though they don't know what it is. And they're trying to literally whitewash US history and obliterate the contributions of people of color. And so the work that Lindsay is doing to advance Asian American studies in curriculum in the public schools is very important, especially as we address this issue of anti-Asian hate. And the other thing that Lindsay lifted up, which I think is so critical, is that on so many issues impacting voters this coming November, we represent the interests of the vast majority. And that's true with regard to gun violence. That's true with regard to abortion rights. That's true with regard to voting rights. That's true with regard to climate justice. That's true with regard to LGBTQ rights. So the majority of people are aligned with us on each and every one of these issues. And yet it is the right wing that are trying to rely on voter suppression and to keep people away from their right to vote in order to secure the tyranny of the minority. That is what is happening in the country today. And especially those who are now trying to promote the big lie that the 2020 election was stolen, and promote the myth that somehow if they lose an election, it's because the system was rigged. These are ways of undermining democracy. And so I do think that this is a critical time for us to be mobilizing our communities to vote like never before. We are running a little short on time. So the last question that goes to all four of you is a call to action. Each and every one of you is an organizer at heart. Each and every one of you are leaders in the labor movement and leaders in the API community. And we have a national audience today of APALA and API and labor activists. So what is your call to action as we gear up for the final months of the November election? And I'll lead off with Susan.
Well, I ordinarily like to pitch my own specific stuff, but honestly, I think because it's APALA, because it's Asian leaders across the country, it's labor people, I really think that people ought to go to Orange County, you know, and pick a place though. It's like one person sent to 50 different places. It's a wonderful thing because, you know, certainly you're backing up that place. But, you know, as I think Brady said, I mean, there are so many Asian leaders now running in Orange County. And you know, that's a pretty rare circumstance, honestly. And so if everyone targeted over there, I can tell you that the campaign, you know, under the party and the direct campaigns, you know, they're, of course, going to need volunteers. We are going to be doing an independent expenditure as well down there. And so, look, we're hiring people, we take volunteers. I guess I am kind of pitching my own thing, yeah. but on the other hand, it is actually kind of a pretty unusual situation. And so, and I think it's going to continue in Orange County, honestly, because all the little cities in Orange County, almost everyone have serious Asian candidates. Unfortunately, some are Republicans, sorry to the Republicans out there, but I'm pretty sure there are none out there. But that's what I would say, a call to do that and in bulk. And if you are interested, we could help you to become, learn, of course, ground operation stuff, but data stuff as well. If you want to learn that and you don't have those skills yet, those are available to help you too.
That's a great call to action, Susan. We have the opportunity of flipping some congressional seats in Orange County. And the API vote is going to be decisive in many of these campaigns. And if we can turn out union households, young voters, communities of color, we will win. So if any of the labor activists, student activists out there would like to invest some time, energy, and resources, I think that Orange County would be a great place for us to focus some resources. Call to action. Gloria, what's your call to action today?
My call to action is for us to continue to do the engagement we've been doing in the past to really organize our community. We are so community-centric. Relationships in our community is always based on family, friends, and neighbors. We shouldn't be shy to talk about this with those folks, And we have so many workers who are part of the labor movement and should be engaged in the things that we do. We have a saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's not true. What happens in Vegas, we preach to every other state. You've got to engage, and believe in what you do. Right now we're under siege. The R's are throwing even the kitchen sink at us, but we're prepared because we've engaged folks. We've turned the tide. Once upon a time, there was a point in our community when we would ask politicians or the electeds to come address our activities. They would not even come, send a surrogate. They would not even send a letter. Now they do all of the above. They send a letter, they send surrogates before, and they themselves come. I mean, and we have to keep that. We have to just keep engaging, and we have to keep believing that we are very much part of really what makes this country run, and we have issues that need to be addressed. My call to action really is keep engaging. Keep engaging.
Thanks very much, Gloria, as a role model for continuing your engagement, and even today, running the national conference. Lindsay, what is your call to action for all of us gathered today?
The first thing that comes to mind is to get involved in your local APALA chapter, right? So we're all here, we're all ready to work and help support each other. And I feel like if everybody chose to really get involved in their local, they would get the education that they needed, they could learn from each other and get sent and mobilized to places that really need a focused attention. So I know that's something that I have on my to-do to get more involved in my local APALA chapter, but that's my call to action. And of course, obviously, if you're part of NEA, we would love to have you as well in the NEA APALA group.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Brady, what's your call to action today?
I'm tired of our community being invisible, being disrespected, being marginalized. And so I think my call to action to all of you is to lead. Lead like Susan, Lindsay, Tita Gloria, lead like Kent has, mentoring folks, but leading in whatever way you can, and to be unapologetic about it, right? To be unapologetic about fighting for more political power for our community. So in addition to getting involved in your union and in your APALA chapter, start leading, because we're the only ones who can do that. We're the only ones who could lead our community and our API membership And there's no one else better to do that.
Thanks so much, Brady. At this point, we will open it up for questions from anyone gathered with us today. You're welcome to either raise your hand and we can call on you to raise a question directly, or you could drop a question in the chat. So the floor is open. We have these 4 extraordinary union and community leaders with us today. If you have any questions of them, please join us in the conversation. Ellen, you have your hand raised. You unmute and then we will.
Yes, I tapped it in there. My question was to Susan, because I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy who won the Republican nomination last night for the Secretary of State in Arizona, that will be able to control the elections, which he plans to really try to get back and tear Biden up for 22 and no telling what he's going to do in 24. What is the plan there to make sure that he does not win that race?
Great question. And so there is the U.S. Senate race, which we are participating in. But as I mentioned, we'll participate in all the down ballot races. So there's the Arizona governor's race. Katie Hobbs is the Democratic candidate. There are 2, I believe, in the primary, Adrian Fontes, I believe, on the Democratic side, eked out over Reginald Boulding, who we were supporting, who's a great African-American leader in Arizona. But Adrian Fontes, another great, Latino leader, the current, he was the registrar in Maricopa County. So we are going to go door to door. There's no other way. Somebody said it here. There's no other way. People do not vote if they are not prompted, And so that's part of the plan. And I agree with you. Secretary of State used to be an often overlooked position, but now more than ever, it's like in the limelight. So, thanks for the question.
All right. Thank you so much, and for all your hard work. I know that's not easy, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that question. Eliana, you have your hand raised, please.
Thank you so much. I have a question mainly for Brady, but everyone feel free to jump in. So I've been very impressed with the work Service Employees International Union has been doing in partnership with the disability community on home and community-based care, and working together with the people who provide the care and don't get the pay and the support they deserve for it, and the people who need the care and often don't get enough of it. So I'd be interested to hear how that partnership has developed and what your thoughts are on moving forward and on things disability and caregiving in the movement.
That's a great question. And I think that partnership started because SEIU, along with AFSCME, engaged the IHSS workers who provide the care in home to the disability community. I want to note that it's those types of commitments to folks who are doing the work, who are not always seen, that's important. And we know that home care workers are overwhelmingly people of color, including APIs. And these home care workers are the only folks who could provide that care to the disability community. And that's what the intersection between workers' rights and racial justice, that's what uplifts it and makes it so important. And it's exactly what we need to start doing in politics, right? We need to start connecting the needs and the priorities of our API community and working families. Because I think Susan said it, if we're just doing it alone, we're not going to win. But when we have our Black vote, our Latinx vote, our API vote, our union vote, our LGBTQ vote, our environmental vote, we're going to win. There's no one who can stop us. And so, yeah, that's a great question. And we have to start doing more in looking at our work through the intersectional lens.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that question. And just to let you know, the UCLA Labor Center is working in partnership with SEIU 2015, AFSCME United Domestic Workers, the Filipino Worker Center, and other advocates for the disabled community and for the senior community to look at policy change to strengthen public financing of the home care sector, but also to lift wages and working conditions for home care workers. So this is a very ambitious project. We are actually teaching a class in the coming year that will focus on this and will engage leaders from the labor movement and from community allies to work together on a policy agenda. So stay tuned, but thank you so much for your question.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I'll definitely stay tuned. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? I know that Gloria had to jump off to her conference. Brian, you want to unmute and raise your question? Brian, are you with us?
I think he put a question in the chat.
I will read the question. Brian Kim said, what is your advice for first-time candidates running for political office? And I know that this is something that a number of unions are advancing, which is to actually recruit your own members and to train them to run for office. So what is your advice for people who are considering running for office? Anyone want to take that?
I can just say that the LA, well, this one, it's a little bit more Los Angeles focused, but Los Angeles County Federation of Labor has a campaign candidate school, which is really pretty cool. And then the other thing is get on a campaign and kind of learn the operation from the nuts and bolts. Because I know it sounds kind of strange because you're really trying to be a policy person, you know, by being an elected leader. Yet knowing the mechanics of how you get elected probably will help you more in the long run, and also put you with allies that can help you get elected. So that's at least something.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, there is a candidate school for union members who want to run for office that's run through the LA County Federation of Labor, but I know that other central labor councils and state feds have similar programs, but that's also great advice. Get involved in a campaign is the very best way to learn how to run your own campaign. Anything you want to add, Lindsay or Brady?
Yeah, I just was going to say that if you're an NEA member, we do have that program, See Educators Run. And so we prepare you for all parts of it. So how to prepare for office, how to communicate effectively to voters, policy talking points, fundraising basics, tips for recruiting volunteers. So all of the parts that you would need, we train you for in the See Educators Run program. So I'm hoping that other unions do that as well. But if you are an NEA member, please email me and I can send you more information about that. Well, you can send me more, you can email me if you're not NEA as well. I'll send you information.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Anything else, Brady?
Well, no, I'll point to what Juan Carlos said in the chat about building relationships with your union and your members in the union, because they're going to be critical in helping you get the endorsement and then also the member power, the worker power that you're going to need to fuel your campaign.
And I just want to say that APALA has played a really crucial role over the years in making the link between emerging API candidates and the labor movement and helping them out with the COPE endorsement process. And so I do think that that is a critical role that APALA has played in the past and will continue to in the future. We have another question for, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add, Kent, that I think that candidates should always volunteer in groups where they believe, you know, what they believe in. And like, for example, if you're a labor person, you should be volunteering at your union, or you can be volunteering at the federation, because, you know, the unions are the, you know, driving, you know, at least the heart, you know, major heart of, you know, getting people elected. So, but volunteering, I think, is really important because it shows, you know, of course it shows your desire, but it also shows that you are willing to learn, you know, and put effort into that.
We have time for one more question, and this will go to Lindsay. Lindsay, have you experienced any anti-union sentiment specific to teachers related either to the specific requirements teachers voiced through unions during the pandemic or critical race theory? Let me see, what else was the question? Critical race theory or actual American history integrated into the curriculum? That was the question to you.
Yes, thank you. I was actually just typing in response to that. So thank you for bringing it into this space. We have definitely felt a lot of anti-union sentiment, a lot of attacks at school boards. You've seen the videos, right, about CRT. As Kent said, you know, people that are complaining about CRT usually don't know what CRT is. And there's also been places where Asian American studies has been shut down in legislation in 4 states. So we're trying to look to see why that failed and how we can combat that. So yes, we've absolutely felt it, and we're working really hard, as Kent said, to partner with UCLA Asian American Studies Center to make sure that we can get Asian American history into every house in America, right? Because Asian American history is American history. And we want to make sure that the people that are providing that curriculum and that content are experts. And so we're really heavily involved and very excited about this project. We're hoping to start beta testing, UCLA. They're hoping to beta test it a few chapters in the fall to really combat this negativity with the power and the beauty of real content and the actual history that we want everybody to know.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. So unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I wanted to thank our panelists, Lindsay from the National Education Association, Susan from Unite Here, Local 11, and Brady from SEIU UHW and our National APALA president. So please join us again 2 weeks from today. We will be having our 5th and final racial justice workshop on immigration and immigrant justice. We have excellent panelists lined up for that 2 weeks from today. And for those of you who have already signed up, we look forward to seeing you at the San Diego-Tijuana border tour, sponsored by APALA and the UCLA Labor Center on August 27th and 28th. I promise you it will be an inspiring and educational experience for everyone. So thank you again to the Dream Summer Fellows, to the UCLA Labor Center team, to the APALA national staff for your work in organizing today's workshop. And we will close out the session. And if any of you would like to fill out an evaluation, please do so before you check off. So thanks so much, and hope to see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Kent.